Like, that's the thing. That's what's so despicable about you liberals, is you pretend that you represent a difference, but you don't. Alrighty, folks. Welcome on into the Central Committee stream with your host, Mike from PA. We are live once again. How's everybody doing? Did you see the news about Venezuelans being deported under enemy of state accusations and rushed out despite judge orders, as well as Brown University H-1B kidney transplant doctor? Yeah, the institutions are failing. The institutions are failing, as I told you they would. And all those things where the Democrats are like, we can't do this, we can't do this. The Supreme Court said we can't do this. Oh, no. The Republicans came in and they said, fuck your shit. And by the way, if the Democrats did filibuster the continuing resolution, the Republicans would have just overturned the filibuster and done the continuing resolution anyway. But it would have at least forced them to do that. The reason why Democrats voted for cloture was to make sure that the filibuster stayed, so that if the Democrats ever get in power, the Republicans could filibuster again. I think one of the big problems that I'm having right now, I think, is a lot of people are just not thinking things through, especially on the left. And I don't think that I don't think that that is something that people are doing. The things that I think that we're facing right now is a kind of complete discrediting of what I would call entryism. And I don't think that people are really talking about it in a serious way. Like, some people are saying, like, okay, this is the grand debate. And I would love to have a grand debate. The grand debate is around, should we reform the Democratic Party? Should we try to win power in the Democratic Party? Or should we do a dirty break? Dirty break is basically means that you try to find the opportunity to leave the Democratic Party in such a way that you do the maximum amount of damage in the hopes of supplanting the Democratic Party with a new left-wing party. So reforming the Dems is you go through the internal processes of the Democratic Party and you win power by taking it over and winning nominations in the Democratic Party, and then you lead the Democratic Party left. Or you do the dirty break, which is you leave the Democratic Party en masse in hopes of destroying it and replacing it with a new progressive, left-wing, socialist, labor, whatever party. And I think a lot of people think that we don't have time to leave the Dems, and unfortunately, you're wrong. Because reforming the Dems is not viable. Taking over the Democrats is not viable. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. But here is the problem. You're not really considering reality when you talk about taking over the Democratic Party. I have a lot of arguments here, and we can go through them all, but they are very important. And I think that people who think we could reform the Dems are just not in touch with reality. So let's talk about what I mean by that. Okay, first of all, reforming the Dems requires taking control of the Democratic Party. The first problem is you're not treating neoliberal centrists as entities of their own. This is the main problem that you have. The main problem that you have is, even if we win, I'm going to grant you everything. We win all the primaries. We get 100 and some people to come in and primary Democrats all across the country. They all win, right? We take over the Democratic Party. The problem that you have is that that doesn't make the centrist Democrat neoliberals stay Democrats. This is what you don't get. They can decamp at that point. They can do the same thing I'm telling us we need to do. The centrist Democrats, led by Barack Obama, could do a dirty break of their own and start their own centrist liberal party. And the only problem is now they're the fresh party. Now they're the new party. And you have the fucking hated, twisted, wrecked Democratic Party. You're the one who has all of the baggage. You're the one who has control of a sinking ship. Except now you don't have the billionaire money. You don't have the institutional money. All the reasons you wanted to keep the Democratic Party has been fundamentally undermined. Why do I think this is a possibility? It's called France. That's exactly what happened with Emmanuel Macron. So the idea that you're just going to win the Democrats and the neoliberals are going to go along with it is wrong. We also have seen that happen in America already. For example, in Buffalo, New York. In Buffalo, New York, a progressive left-winger won the Democratic nomination for mayor. And what did the incumbent Democratic mayor do? He ran as an independent. He ran as a write-in campaign, and the Democratic Party in New York supported him over the Democratic nominee. The institutions of the Democratic Party supported him. And he was able to win because the Republicans and the Democrats united against the Democratic progressive. I have experiences in my own life. So that's number one. Number one is you're not treating neoliberal centrists like an independent, hostile entity, which they are. They will never, ever, ever line up behind you. And this is also true if you look at 2020. All of the stories that came out about how the Democratic Party was going to risk party damage to stop Bernie. They are ideologically opposed to you. And if you win the Democratic Party, I'll give you another example. DSA-led reformers took over the Democratic Party in Nevada. What did the Democrats do? They stole all the money. And the centrist Democrats in office all went and decamped the Democratic Party and left it to rot. You are not treating centrist Democrats as an ideological opponent who will not accept your lead. That is why you fail, because you do not understand reality. You think, oh, we'll have a fair primary, and just like Bernie lined up behind Kamala, or just how Bernie Sanders and AOC lined up behind Biden, they'll do the same for us. They will not. So you're trying to win over a despised Democratic Party with a 29% approval rating for groups that will not support you, even if you win fair and square. So you're saying, hey, let's stay in the Democratic Party and try to take it over when they will not let you. Another example. If those examples aren't enough, I got more. Jeremy Corbyn. He took over the Labour Party in the UK. What happened? The internal Labour Party neoliberals did everything they could to sabotage him. They stole party money. They spent it on his ideological opponents. They didn't run the campaign that they were ordered to run. They engaged in mutiny, subterfuge, and treachery. They started up a false accusations of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, aligning themselves with Zionists to attack progressives and social justice reformers as anti-Semites, and ultimately handed the election to the Conservative Party because of the internal sabotage and mutiny that was taking place. You guys just are fucking delusional. We can't ally with the liberals because they will not ally with us. You are just wrong. All they'll do is they'll use you. They'll say, what, you gotta vote for us over Trump? This is not something that I've come to lightly. I used to be a person who said reform the Dems, run in primaries. But unfortunately, I have personal experience of how that goes. At best, you will be able to hold a few backbench seats. That's the squad. Bernie Sanders, the squad. It doesn't matter if they're hyper popular on social media. They have no leadership position. They have no power. And like at the end of the day, You're asking, you're calling for reforming the Dems when they will not be reformed. Even if we did everything right, they will betray us. So that's number 1 point. Even if you win, the centrist Democrats will not line up behind you, and they will use their power to betray you. They will use progressive votes as a mandate to betray progressive policy. So winning the Democrats isn't even plausible. And even if you do, the centrist neoliberals will leave the Democratic Party anyway, except you'll have this party that is old, that has low approval rating, that has a lot of baggage, and it's just scum. And then, in the first place. The other problem is that's unlikely to occur anyway. That's unlikely to happen anyway. And I'll tell you why. Because the types of people that vote in primaries, and here's the problem with our election system right now. We have primary elections and we have general elections. The people that support us and populist leftism, which is the majority of the American people, they are much less likely to vote in primaries. So let's say the current Democratic Party is 65% progressives, 35% conservative, neoliberals. That's not true. It's actually more like 80-20. But I'm just giving you an example that will help you understand, right? The types of people that voted primaries are upscale, white, and wealthier, and more college educated. These are the types of people that are more conservative ideologically, more liberal ideologically. They identify more with the Democratic Party as an identity than they do with an ideological plan. They are the people who are NPR listeners, right? An upscale white liberal. These are the people that have the highest approval rating for the Democratic Party as a whole. They're the people that are not as open to our message. So you're literally, and the people that are, they show up in general elections when all the important questions have been decided. So you're literally structuring your political fucking strategy towards maximum failure, because the high turnout is in general elections. The highest turnout is in general elections in the presidential election year. The people that are the most disillusioned for politics, they're easiest to get in a general election presidential year. You're not winning primaries that have 20% turnout, 50% turnout. The third thing, we can't restrict corporate or super PAC money in Democratic primaries. If we started our own party, we could actually make rules against giving nominations to people that receive super PAC money, receive super PAC support, receive campaign finance support we could actually set our own bylaws that are different than the laws of the country. We could set bylaws which prohibit, forbid, block the use of APAC money, super PAC money. All those things. You can make a bylaw and say this person cannot receive this party's nomination if they X, Y, and Z. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed to you're allowed to deny those things influence in your primary. You don't have to allow those to happen. In Democratic primaries, AIPAC and Republican billionaires spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to select the most right-wing Democrats they can. Whereas in a new party, we could say you're not allowed to do that. And if you do, you automatically lose the fucking primary. You can do all, and I'm not saying that, all of that is how reality works. You've been so cucked by vote blue no matter who that you've never actually thought about this stuff with any depth. And the third and the final thing, and the most important thing, is the Democratic Party isn't even worth winning. The Democratic Party is unpopular. The Democratic Party is despised. So you win the Democratic Party, and all that happens is you discredit your movement. You average, everyday people hate your guts. Just 7% of Americans have a very favorable opinion of the Democratic Party, the lowest number ever recorded. So you're really, I'm not saying that I'm not going to support left-wing candidates in Democratic primaries now. I will. It's called being a strategic voter. If I could get more left-wingers in elected office, I'm going to do it. But what I am saying is, as a movement, we need to begin the conversation out of the black hole that is vote blue no matter who, lesser evil voting, and start talking about how that has checkmated us from any political relevance. FC Neo Tokyo says, I'm in my 40s and have only voted for Dems my whole life. I literally never vote for them again after this. The Republicans are just evil, so unless there's a new party, I'm done. I mean, and that's exactly my point. You're not alone. If you want to send me that article again, you can. And this is what the Democrats want to run on. The abundance agenda's fundamental sleight of hand is that by unleashing the private sector from burdensome consumer protection, labor standards, and zoning regulations, American consumers might recover their lost purchasing power and living standards without the state directly tampering with workplace standards or wage levels. The private sector would supply more goods at lower costs if only it could. It hasn't panned out in Colorado, and it's unlikely to elsewhere. Like that is the Republican platform from 2000. That is George W. Bush's platform.
Welcome Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raju. First up this morning, a brand new exclusive CNN poll that paints a brutal reality for Democrats as they struggle to mount a unified opposition to President Trump. Americans' favorable views of the Democratic Party's brand are
hype train. Hell yeah, guys! Thank you so much.
29%.
Hey, Kelly, thanks for the sub.
For Republicans, it is the lowest ever recorded for Democrats in CNN polling going back more than 30 years. As you can see, the party's numbers dropping a staggering 20 points in just 4 years. The CNN SRSR's poll also found 57% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters are more interested in seeing their party leaders stop the GOP agenda, compared to 42% who are more interested in cutting bipartisan deals.
Yeah, of course we should. Love Bass Odage. Thanks for the 10 gifties, Chuckies, by the way. Thanks, you, brother.
Now, this survey was taken before this week's tumultuous battle over funding the government, which resulted in one of the ugliest intra-party Democratic disputes in years, and left many in the party lobbying furious attacks at Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who ultimately reversed course and let a GOP bill funding the government become law in order to avert a shutdown. Now a bitter round of finger-pointing is taking shape after Democrats failed to get a single concession from the GOP, despite having their first piece of leverage to fight back against Trump. Now the big question, where does a party in deepening turmoil and in open warfare go from here?
I do find it hard to believe others don't see the current state of affairs within the Democratic Party and not see that this is a perfect opportunity to distance themselves politically. They have abandoned voters time and time again, burning others, and that feels betrayed by Senate Dems. They should start a... And here's the thing about starting a new party, chat. It probably won't work instantly. But here's the golden opportunity we have. Donald Trump is a lame duck. We get 2 cycles to figure this shit out. And it's very clear the Democrats are not going to resist anything Donald Trump is doing. So what's the fucking, like, what are you worried about? What are you worried about losing? The Democrats' seats that they won't use to block Trump? They just gave him a continuing resolution as he illegally undermines the federal government, as he overrules judge orders and ignores the courts. Like, at what point are you, like, what are you worried about losing? What are you worried about losing exactly? And that is the reality. And the thing is, and I want to be very clear to you, I have no interest in being the junior partner in the neoliberal coalition anymore. I'm not going to allow myself to be tricked to do a genocide, to support people like Chuck Schumer who want me dead. And just because you're too stupid to see it, that's not my problem. Yemen babies can wait on us voting every 4 years for a new party. Joe Biden bombed Yemen himself, you fucking delusional lunatic. There isn't one thing you can say that Joe Biden didn't already do. Like, that's the thing. That's what's so despicable about you liberals, is you pretend that you represent a difference, but you don't.
In a normal world, Democrats would be happy campers tonight. New polling from NBC News shows a majority of Americans are souring on Trump's policies, including 54% who say they disapprove of his handling of the economy. Trump's allies like Vice President J.D. Vance aren't faring any better, with 47% of voters having a negative view of him as well. Elon Musk is unpopular, with 51% holding negative views of America's first buddy. Again, in a normal world, this would be ripe for celebration among Democrats. But the same poll shows support for the Democratic Party is super weak. Just 27% of voters say they have positive views of their party. And that's the party's lowest positive rating in NBC News polling dating back more than 30 years. So tonight the question is, how did Democrats get to this moment? How did they get here? And it appears to stem from the fact that the party has failed to stand by its principles and so far has failed to push back against a president it claims is a threat to our democracy. Look, no one really encapsulates that more these days than Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. The New York Democrat is facing party-wide backlash after he and 9 other Senate Democrats voted Friday to support the GOP's continuing resolution, which effectively keeps the government open, but also gives more power to Donald Trump and Elon Musk. The embattled senator sat down recently for an interview with the New York Times to discuss the direction of his party. The interview, released today, did little to soothe his critics. Watch.
The Republicans would like to have some freedom from Trump, but they won't until we bring him down in popularity. I am hopeful that our Republican colleagues will resume working with us. And I talk to them. One of the places I talk to them, go in the gym, you know, when you're on that bike in your shorts, panting away next to a Republican, a lot of the inhibitions come off. I believe that my hard work against Trump will pay off.
Well, that supposed hard work isn't paying off. Voters are not buying it, whether he's running on a treadmill or not. Our new poll finds 65% of Democratic voters want the party to stick to their positions and push.
By the way, the compromise with Trump group. Oh, by the way, look at that chat. 65-32. That's exactly what the break I said earlier. 65% of Democratic voters being progressive, right? Remember how I said that earlier? But here's the thing with the 32%. They are doing what's known as elite signaling. You know what elite signaling is? It's basically Chuck Schumer. He is the leader of the Democratic Party, and he's saying to Democrats, we need to compromise with Trump. So the people who trust Chuck Schumer are saying, oh, he's the leader. He knows what he's doing. We should compromise with Trump. Now, if Chuck Schumer came out here and said, fight Trump, it would be 90-10. Okay? But because the elites, because Chuck Schumer, because Hakeem Jeffries are saying, no, we should compromise with the Republicans, the people who are elite signalers, elite signal followers, I should say, they will go behind them. And here's the reality, and this is the catastrophe that we're in, is that not only are the Democratic Party is it ineffective, but it's also causing infighting with how ineffective they are. This is why, and I think a lot of people, you know, I talk about the WHIGs because they are a great example. There are other examples from the 20th century we could draw on, but I like to talk about the WHIGs. The presidential election of 1848. That was the last time a Whig president won. This is Joe Biden. And the reality, and like, look at this. Look at this map. Look at this map of America, of the election. Do you see how there's WHIGs and, WHIGs winning victories in Louisiana and Georgia and North Carolina and Florida? Like, wow. The WHIGs united the South and the North. They broke out of those regional rivalries. But here's the reality, chat, is that the Free Soil Party was starting. They didn't win any states. The Free Soil Party started. They didn't win any states, but they were arguing, hey, we've got to stop spreading slavery across this continent. It's wrong. It's bad for free workers. And the WHIGs were, so you had a pro-slavery party, you had a third-party movement that was starting saying slavery is wrong and we shouldn't spread it, and you had the WHIG party, which is the, hey, why can't we all just get along? Hey, white man, why can't we all just get along? Why can't we all just get along? And the reality is that more and more people just could not ignore the slavery issue. More and more people could not ignore the slavery issue. And so the Democrats on a pro-slavery platform won. The Whig Party began to lose its ideological reason for existing. And then that brings us to 1856. And this is what you're all worried about. This is what you're all worried about. James Buchanan, probably the absolute worst president we've ever had. The only president from Pennsylvania. He was so bad that he pretty much fucking tainted the Pennsylvania presidents. The worst president we've ever had, James Buchanan, I think is pretty safe to say. But you see a new party, the Republican Party. And they didn't win. John C. Fremont, the first Republican nominee for president, didn't win. He lost. And the worst president America ever had won. Did you notice something, chat? The American Whig Alliance only won one state, Maryland. That's the Democratic Party of today. Democratic Party of today is a fucking joke. And it's hated by everyone. And if something like this happened, it would only win Maryland. That's exactly the same state that it would win. Maybe Virginia. And then, in 1860, the Republican Party triumphs with probably America's second best president, arguably best president, and some people, you know, especially if you're more conservative, tend to cite Abraham Lincoln as the best president. But I would say he's our second best president. And that's not saying much, because most presidents are dog shit. But you know what made Abraham Lincoln such a good president? He fought the conservatives and the reactionaries with bullets and bayonets. And for me, that earns a lot of credit. Killing a lot of white slavers in the South, that earns you a lot of bonus points, you know, in my view. So, like, when we look through our history of elections, right, the Whig Party went from, 12 years later was replaced. I mean, it was literally began to be replaced almost immediately, right? You had one last Whig Party race, and people just couldn't take it anymore, and they finally started to split. Millard Fillmore was the 13th president of the United States. He was the last president to be a member of the Whig Party and the last to be neither a Democrat nor a Republican. A former member of the U.S. House of Representatives, Fillmore was elected vice president in 1848 and succeeded to the presidency when Zachary Taylor died in July 1850. Fillmore was instrumental in passing the Compromise of 1850, which led to a brief truce in a battle over expansion of slavery. And this is the reality. There are things that we cannot have truces over anymore. And by the way, what happened to the Whig voters? Did they all die? Did they all disappear in a puff of smoke? What happened is, you know who was a Whig? Abraham motherfucking Lincoln. Lincoln was born into poverty in a log cabin in Kentucky and was raised on the frontier. He was self-educated and became a lawyer, Whig party leader, Illinois state legislator, and U.S. representative. Angered by the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which opened the territories to slavery, he became a leader of the new Republican Party. That's what happens, and that's what would happen. I don't think AOC will ever win the presidency as a member of the Democratic Party. I think it's physically impossible for that to happen. If she actually wanted to be president, the only way she's going to become president is just how Abraham Lincoln became president, which is saying, fuck the useless, disgusting piece of shit mainstream party that I was a part of. They're hopeless. And starting something new and fresh. That's it. I don't think she wants to be president.
So on social media,
Every single politician wants to be president.
you've been urging people to call their senators, tell them to vote no on cloture, which allows the bill to go forward for a vote of just a simple majority, and to vote no on the vote for a simple majority on the Republican bill. What do you say to the counter argument of, like, a government shutdown hurts the country, hurts the people you represent, from Queens and the Bronx?
Absolutely, and that is why House Democrats have laid out a plan, as well as several Senate Democrats laid out a plan to keep government open for another 30 days as Republicans negotiate a deal with Democrats in order to have an extended government funding bill.
But the House would have to come back into session, right? I mean,
but House Democrats are in town. I mean, we're afraid of working? Is that the problem here? That the idea that, God forbid, members of Congress have to fly back and do their jobs? I mean,
okay.
Genuinely, come on.
So Chuck Schumer, I guess the Senate Democratic leader, your senator, said at this meeting that he is going to vote for cloture. He is going to vote to allow there to be a simple majority vote. You think that's wrong?
I believe that's a tremendous mistake. Yes.
Why?
I think, well, first and foremost, the American people, if anyone has held a town hall or has seen what has been happening in town halls, American people, whether they are Republicans, independents, Democrats, are up in arms about Elon Musk and the actual gutting of federal agencies across the board. This continuing resolution codifies much of this chaos that Elon Musk is wreaking havoc on the federal government. It codifies many of those changes. It sacrifices and completely eliminates congressional authority in order to review these impulsive Trump tariffs that he's switching on and off. And on top of that, for folks who are concerned about effectiveness in government, this Republican extreme spending bill removes all of the guardrails and all of the accountability measures to ensure that money is being spent in the way that Congress has directed for it to be spent. This turns the federal government into a slush fund for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It sacrifices congressional authority, and it is deeply partisan. And so to me, it is almost unthinkable why Senate Democrats would vote to hand the few pieces of leverage that we have away for free when we've been sent here to protect Social Security, protect Medicaid, and protect Medicare.
You have expressed opposition to government shutdowns in the past. Here's your very first speech on the House floor.
It is not normal to shut down the government when we don't get what we want. It is not normal for public servants to run away and hide from the public that they serve. And it is certainly not normal to starve the people we serve for a proposal that is wildly unpopular among the American people.
Now, I get that you hate this continuing resolution. You don't think it's a good bill, but the alternative is likely a government shutdown.
Well, the alternative is to agree on a 30-day stopgap to keep government open as negotiated. The proposal is in front of the House. The proposal is on the Senate. Republicans had time to seek Democratic votes, and we can extend that time for them to seek that vote. Once again, we can come back. We can fly back. We can vote on this. We can get a stopgap measure, extend the amount of time to negotiate while we figure out a solution here for the American people. And I also agree, again, I maintain that position that government shutdowns, we can keep the government open with a 30-day clean CR. And on top of that, I also maintain the position that government officials and public servants should not be hiding from the public the way that Republicans are hiding and being instructed to not host town halls right now because of the outrage among the American public around their attempts to cut Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare.
My understanding is that your other senator, another Democrat, Kirsten Gillibrand, also thinks that the Democrats should vote to go forward with this spending bill, unlike Senator Tim Kaine that we just heard from. And my guess is, I don't speak for either Schumer or Gillibrand, but my guess would be if they were here, they'd say, you're being naive. It's really just a choice between voting for a government shutdown or voting not for a government shutdown. People aren't going to come back. It just doesn't happen that way. Again, that's not me. I imagine that that's what they would say to you.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that Senate
Joey Hardy, thank you for
Democrats
the tier
think
3.
that it is beyond wildest convention for us to come back, but House Democrats have done that before. The House has reconvened in emergency sessions before. I've certainly voted on the floor of Congress they've even called us back from August recess before. This idea that it is beyond the scope of imagination for us to come back from vacation is just not an acceptable answer for the American public.
I want to play something that President Trump said earlier today. Take a listen.
If it's shut down, it's only going to be, if there's a shutdown, it's only because of the Democrats, and they would really be taking away a lot from our country and from the people of our country.
Your colleagues, House Republicans, are already using the term Schumer shutdown, which has that nice alliterative style. Are you not worried at all about Democrats taking the heat for the shutdown?
We know, and the American people are not going to have the wool pulled over their eyes. Everybody knows that Donald Trump is president, that Republicans have the Senate, and Republicans have the House. They have the keys to the entire United States government. And if Republicans wanted to avert a shutdown, they can. They can. If they need Democratic votes, then they can negotiate with Democrats to get those votes. It is simple. They have two options, to pass it with their votes or to pass it with Democratic votes. And we also see the data bearing this out. When you look at public polling from very reputable firms, we see that the American people understand that, and they know that the party in charge of government is the party that's in charge of keeping government open.
What do you think of the job Democratic leaders are doing, not just Senate Democratic leaders, but also Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, your fellow New Yorker, in terms of standing up to Trump?
Well, when we look at this vote around this government funding bill that we saw this week, Leader Hakeem Jeffries was able to keep the entire House Democratic caucus united and together.
Except for Jared Golden.
Right.
Except for
every
one.
single House Democrat, including every single House Democrat who won a Trump district, except for one out of over 200, voted against this deeply partisan, extreme Republican spending bill. Not just because they're Democrats, but because they know it's bad for the country. This bill is bad for the country. And so I think that in terms of Democratic leadership in the House, we've seen that result in the House. I think it's time that we see similar results in the Senate.
Would you, what do you think of the job that Chuck Schumer is doing? Would you ever challenge him, do you think?
I think that what we need right now is a united Senate Democratic caucus that can stand up for this country and not.
And the problem that AOC has is like that's just not the case. It's never happened. When Joe Biden was president, the Democratic senators came out and blocked his whole agenda. You know what I mean? Like what is she talking about? And there was no consequences for that. In fact, Joe Biden celebrated Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema more than any other senator. He was all over them. And now they're both out of office.
Not vote for cloture and not vote for this bill. And I think that the strength that we have is in this moment. Reconciliation and all of these, Republicans do not need Democratic votes for that. They need it for this. And so the strength of our leadership in this moment is going to demonstrate the strength of our caucus. And I cannot urge enough how bad of an idea it is to empower and enable Donald Trump and Elon Musk in this moment. It is dangerous and it is reckless.
Well, you just talked about the strength of your leadership. Chuck Schumer just said that he's going to vote for cloture. Not only the Democrats can do it, but he's going to participate in it. Does that mean that you think he's a weak Senate leader?
I think that that would be a mistake. But we have time between now and tomorrow, and I hope that individuals that are considering that reconsider it. I genuinely do. I don't think it's what New Yorkers want. I don't think it's what the country wants. This is genuinely not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about deep cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. This is about the evisceration of the federal government. This is about codifying the looting that is happening at the behest of Elon Musk in order to pay for his tax breaks for billionaires. And we have a responsibility to stand up for it. That is why people elected us, and that is our responsibility to them right now.
Yeah, Schumer has now. It's funny that she won't say yes because she thinks she's playing good politics with the party, but every time she does that shit, she just loses face. Yeah, that's the problem. Is that there's just no gain from supporting the Democratic Party. Like people just dislike you more. Like you don't win over anybody. Like that's the reality.